the official notices would be item 15 on the agenda. Mr. Dlamini, if you can kindly assist Mr. Beer with the proper agenda.
Okay, no, I think Mr. Beer was probably looking at the in-committee agenda, because that the item 6 there is the official notices and personnel layer.
I see. Okay. Would that be correct, Mr. Beer?
Apologies, Chair. Maybe. Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. All right. So let's proceed with item 6. Mr. Mavuso, item 6, please.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, this submission will be presented by Welile, supported by Docas, but it is about the temporary exemptions for the number of these companies that are listed here. And they made spirited presentations at the Grid Code Committee. And the assessment of the committee was that with this temporary exemption, they won't compromise the code of practice and integrity of the national grid. I'll give it to Welile to expand.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Welcome, Mr. Mkiza Jr.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to Mr. Mavuso for that introduction. I'd like to greet the members, also the members of staff that are in this meeting, and any public people that are present on this platform. So we are presenting today a set of exemptions from 11 different IPPs. 2 of them are simply exemptions, but the other 9 are temporary exemptions that need to be extended. So I would just like to start by saying the purpose of the submission is to request the Electricity Subcommittee to approve the 2 temporary exemptions from Mulilo Priska Sodenix and then Mulilo Priska PV RF plant. The other 9 are on item B in section 2, which is quite a number of the IPPs that are listed there. Just to draw your attention to table 1, which summarizes which ones are extensions and which ones are temporary exemptions, with the dates clearly indicated there. Just want to to say again what Mr. Mavuso said earlier, that these have already gone through GCAC for for examination to check all the different aspects that are related to these exemptions, as to why they are applying for exemptions, and also to scrutinize the validity of the reasons for requesting the exemptions from this particular item on the grid code. This meeting took place on the 26th of May, where the GCAC considered all these different applications. Now, the reason for this particular part of the grid code is to ensure that the plant is still functioning as it should be since it was commissioned. So these tests are routinely done every 6 years to ensure that any changes that have occurred do not have any significant impact on the grid. And then table 2 basically summarizes the reasons for the exemptions, with all the remedial actions that the IPP will take in order to ensure that the exemptions are handled, and then the plant is put in a condition where it can comply with the grid code. I won't go through each and every one of them because of detail. And then maybe just looking at the section 5.3, there are conditions that are attached to these exemptions, and they are listed from item A to D. Maybe I can just go through them. That the IPP will have to demonstrate to the system operator to ensure that all the capability that the plant is able to do currently is shown to the system operator. And then secondly, he has to report quarterly to NERSA and to the Greek Code Secretariat on the progress that has been made to achieve compliance. So this will be probably every 3 months, depending on the plan that the IPP has put in place. And then should the network require the lacking capability, or as may be required by the system operator, then the IPP will have to reduce the output or disconnect his generator in order to prevent compromising network integrity. And then lastly, no deemed energy payments shall be claimed as a result of granting these exemptions. And then I'll just draw your attention to the last section, section 14, which is recommendations. We recommend that the Electricity Subcommittee approves these temporary exemptions for all the applicants as outlined in Table 3. Table 3 is similar to Table 2, which summarizes, I beg your pardon, it's similar to Table 1, which summarizes all the applicants' dates that they are requesting for exemptions. And then in 14.1.2, we ask that the ELS approves the conditions that these IPPs are subjected in the duration of the exemption that is granted. And these I have highlighted already earlier from A to G. So thank you, Chair. I hand back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. For a nice presentation. Members, you've got the submission before you. Any questions, comments for the team? Ms. Sabia?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the team for the presentation. Chair, just one question with regards to the conditions for the extension. I think it says there that you need to actually report quarterly to NERSA and the Greek Code Secretariat. I just wanted to find out the implications for failure to report quarterly. Will it result in the cancellation of that exemption, or what are the implications? That's what I wanted to find out from the team. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam. Madam Assetti?
Thank you, Chairperson, for the opportunity. I support the recommendations, Chairperson, but there's just one thing that I would like to get clarification, given the fact that these are applications brought by different licensees and we have consolidated the evaluation of the applications. All that I want to find out is in terms of the reasons for decision, whether we will separate the reasons for decision so that we comply fully with Section 10 in terms of the decision for each applicant and the reasons thereof for each applicant. I just wanted to find out just on that issue so that we are clear that there will be reasons for decision for each applicant and that will not be consolidated and that will be in compliance with Section 10. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Assetti. Mr. Mkhize?
Thanks, Chairperson. I support the recommendations as put forth. I would just like to get assurance that there is a contingency built into the new dates in particular to enable that there be no further extensions, because to be too ambitious in terms of the dates within which there will be compliance tends to be self-defeating generally. I think there should be reasonableness in terms of the date. Just want to get that assurance that there is a measure of reasonableness, that indeed there's demonstration that within the new period set, they will be able to comply. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Sonia, Advocate Sithole?
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I also support the recommendations, and my issue relates to a point of procedure in terms of the time that has taken for us to get these applications. And if I heard Mr. Mkhize in his presentation, he said that the Grid Code committee sat on the 26th of May, and now we are in September. I thought that it's quite a long time for us to then consider them today, unless if there is a reason for that. And as well, if there is, I just want to find out if there's a way for us to really improve on the turnaround times for these type of applications to be brought to the committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Advocate. I think those are your questions to you, Kabazalungan. Can I hand over back to you if we can respond to the questions by members?
Yes, maybe starting with Mrs. Sibia's question. I'll also ask my teammates to come in if there's anything that I will miss. But the implication for not reporting, currently we are revising the governance code, and that matter did come up in terms of how we deal with such kind of non-compliances. So I believe that it will be included when we discuss this particular matter as we are busy revising the governance code. So thank you very much, Mr. Sibia. We are looking at it, and we will ensure that it is included somewhere in the governance code. And then secondly, what is the reason for each applicant in terms of reason for decisions? I believe Table 2 highlights the detailed reasons, and I must assure the member that each applicant is scrutinized individually. There is no blanket sort of decision that is made. So every application is scrutinized individually as per Table 2, which states all the reasons for granting the exemption. And then number 3, contingency built into
Mr. Mkiza, before you step off this one, are you therefore then saying that there's not going to be a separate RFD document on this?
No, sir. There is not going to be a separate RFD.
All right, please proceed.
Thank you. So in terms of the contingency build, we've asked the Grid Code Secretariat who received the application to insist that the applicants provide plans which the Secretariat scrutinizes to ensure that indeed the plans are not too ambitious. So as per Appendix 1, we have furnished the plans which most, even though not all, we are still trying to ensure that all the applicants submit the plans. So going forward, we are going to be emphasizing it again, that all applicants provide well thought out plans to ensure that they will indeed be able to close all the items that need to be closed so that they can actually comply with the Grid Code at the time that they say they will. And then lastly, item 4, the Grid Code the Secretariat actually set on the 28th of July, CEO. There was a mistake on the document. It's not the 26th of May. It is the 28th of July. That is close to the end of July, beginning of August. So I believe that I've covered all the items, Chair, unless my team wants to add to any omissions that I've made. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any addition, team? Thank you for correcting the date, and I thought that it was in July, and then that's why I was wondering also May sounded, from what I had heard Mr. Mabuso report on at another meeting, I thought the meeting was in July. Thank you, Mr. Mkize. Members, any follow-ups, new questions? If not, can I then take you to the decision that is sought, which is on paragraph 14. So that I don't waste your time, I'm not going to read through them. Perhaps just to read on to the record just the names of the applicants. I don't know which are listed in table 3, but I won't read the whole table. Just the names. The first one is Fredendal Solar Park. The other one, and they are seeking extension to the 30th of June 2023. Aurora Solar Park, also the same date, the 30th of June 2023. Hopefield Wind Farm, 31st of August 2023. Grass Reach Wind Farm, the 31st of December 2022 this year. Chaba Wind Farm, 30th of June 2023. Span PV plant, 31st of December 2023. Herbert PV plant, 30th of June 2023. Molilo Priska, Sonadix, PV, 30th of June 2023. Molilo Solar Priska, the 28th of February 2023. Molilo Solar, DR, 20th of February 2023. Molilo Priska PV RF, the 30th of June 2023. And of course, the actual conditions as listed under 14.1.2. By show of hands, members, if we can support those recommendations. Thank you, Madam Massetti, Mr. Mkhize, Advocate Sithole. I also support. Thank you, Mr. Pokula. Ms. Sibia, would you support those recommendations?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. So we have all supported the recommendations as listed under paragraph 14. Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. You've got your decision. Can we then move on to item 7, which is listed incorrectly on the agenda is correct, but it's listed incorrectly here. Can I hand it over back to you, Mr. Mavusa?
Yeah, I hope I have the right agenda on my side, but it's the one, number 7 is the permanent exemption for Anode Power Station. Am I correct?
Correct. But I'm just
Yes.
saying that the item itself is listed as a publication of the ESCOM RTP consultation paper, which is dealt with later.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, this one will be presented by Dorcas. Just as an introduction, this is a permanent exemption application from clause 3165 of the transmission code. And the Anode Power Station is in Mpumalanga. It's a coal-fired power station with a nameplate of 2,352 megawatts, and it was commissioned in 1971. Dorcas, with those words, can you please take over?
Okay, thank you.
Right. Thank you. Over to you, Ms. Makalaba.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Mr. Mavuso. And good morning, members and colleagues. I'll take us through the submission for Anode Power Station. The purpose of this submission is to request the Electricity Subcommittee to approve a permanent exemption for Unit 1 of Anode Power Station from complying with Clause 3.1.651 of the Transmission Network Code. The ELS is delegated as per Section 1.7 of the Electricity Delegation Matrix to approve exemptions from the Grid Code. Just in addition to the background that Mr. Mavuso has already provided, Unit 1 of Anode Power Station was commissioned in July 1972, and the unit is 50 years old, and it has a rating of 370 megawatts, just this one specific unit. And in terms of the clause requirement, all units that are above 50 megawatts are expected to have an operational governor capable of responding to system frequency variations. So governing is basically a mode of operation whereby any change in system frequency beyond the desirable level or the allowable level will have an impact on the generator output. And this is done in order to correct the system frequency. So currently Unit 1 of Anode Power Station is unable to respond as required by Clause 3.1.6.15 due to challenges with the control system on the unit. So in other words, the mills on this unit cannot be operated in such a way that they can give an instantaneous response to a frequency change due to some modifications that were done on the unit in 1981. So the requirement is that the unit should be able to give a minimum response of 3% of the continuous rating within 10 seconds. So currently this specific unit is not able to do that. So the station is requesting a permanent exemption because it has reached its end of life and it will soon be decommissioned as per IRP 2019. So according to the system operator report, the medium-term system adequacy report, the unit is actually planned to be decommissioned in September of 2027. So the station does not see the benefit of investing in the upgrades currently to fix the problem or to be able to comply with this requirement. So when they evaluate, there will be technical benefits, but in terms of the financial benefits, given the remaining time, it will not yield a desirable result. So with those reasons, I would like to move then to the recommendations under section 14, which is on page 6. So it is recommended that the electricity subcommittee approve the exemption, the permanent exemption for unit 1 of Anode Power Station as outlined in table 2. I'll stop there, Chairperson. Thank you.
Ms. Makalakane, before I request the members to comment, is there any risk that this presents, and how is this risk going to be mitigated?
Mitigated, okay. So in terms of the risk that this poses onto the system, so ancillary services are required to, so instantaneous reserve it's part of the ancillary services that are contracted with generators to assist the system operator to be able to balance the system demand. So if without the provision of these ancillary services, basically it just means that the system operator will, the risk that it poses is that of a limitation to say, now there's a resource that the system operator could use to be able to balance the system for stability, but that resource is not available. But in terms of how that is mitigated is that this unit is not the only one that is contracted to provide this service. So the system operator granted support for this unit because they know that they can be able to get this service from other units that are currently capable of providing instantaneous reserve.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, you've got the submission before us. Any questions, comments for the presenter or the team? City.
Thank you, Chairperson, for the opportunity. Perhaps due to my limitation in the technical operations of these units, I would like to just get an understanding really on the on how this is managed. I didn't get the explanation there, how it is managed to the extent that this unit will still be operational. And I do appreciate that there will be a time when it is decommissioned. All I want to understand is how will it be better managed in the meantime? Will it be replaced by other units that are capable of meeting that requirement in terms of the balance? Or at the time when this unit is not able to produce the desired outcomes to maintain the balance, will it then be sort of taken offline and then they rely on other units to be able to achieve the required balance? I just want to understand just that part in terms of how it will be managed, the challenge associated with this unit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam. Mr. Mkiza, your questions, please, sir.
Thanks, Chairperson, and thanks to the presenter. I'm partly covered by what Madam Masset has put forth, because I think that it is important for the team to write this and explain it well in terms of so that there is a level of understanding also by the non-technical person necessarily in terms of electricity generation. I think it's important to indicate where, first of all, detect what will enable the detection of the imbalance. And once the imbalance is detected, then it means that there is, in other words, an override. And then how that override then is executed, because the unit itself does not automatically adjust. So I just want to explain that in simpler terms. The issue of not of making it permanent and not requiring compliance as such is understood from a point of view of investing and not being able to get the returns therefrom. And it is a point that is, I think, is well articulated and is appreciated from that point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Madam Spear.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the presenter for the presentation. Just from my side, just the confirmation with regards to the reasoning or support for a permanent exemption. Because when you look at it here, yes, I do understand the issue of the licensee saying they will not be able to recover the capital costs for the remaining years as they are scheduling it for decommissioning by September 2027. I just wanted the confirmation from the team that is that an approved decision that is there, because we've seen before there were instances where plant was recommissioned afterwards. What is the situation if that happens? Because as per the document, it says RP 29, 2019, it says it will be decommissioned. Then what is the situation now if then they recommission that same plant? How are we going to actually now cancel that permanent exemption? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Spear. Before you respond, can I pose a leading question to you, Mr. Kalagan? The leading question being, am I correct in understanding that because it provides two services, the active power generation and ancillary services, that for the active power generation, the unit is fine, it just cannot provide the ancillary services in terms of frequency control that may be required by the system operator. Would I be correct in posing the question that way? But over to you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. And yes, you are correct that what the unit is unable to provide, it's an ancillary service and it's a contracted service. But from the day-to-day provision of active power, it is able to provide that. It's just that for this specific requirement, the unit is required to respond to the change in system frequency within a specific time. And in this case, it's like 10 seconds. And for that, you need an automated operation to be able to control all parameters to get to that output. But in the short answer to that is that, yes, you are correct. And also to come to Ms. Maseti's question in terms of how is it managed in the sense that now the unit is unable to provide this service, as I've indicated earlier. So even in terms of how how the system operator contracts for these ancillary services or resources, it will contract with the station, and the station has a number of units. So for instance, for right now, Unit 1 can provide instantaneous reserves, but Unit 5 is able to provide instantaneous reserves. So what will happen in the situation that the system operator needs this, then Unit 5 will be able to provide that instantaneous reserves. And also these stations, they actually, in terms of planning for system operator, they bid ahead of time in terms of, I think it's a day ahead where they indicate how much they will be able to provide that is available for ancillary service. So I would say in terms of managing it, that's how the system operator manages it. There's a plan, and also the power stations indicate ahead of time in terms of what they're capable of and what they're not capable of providing. But the other units are able to provide the service if required. And in terms of Mr. Mkhize's question to say, how is then the imbalance detected? I would think that because it's dependent on the frequency. So if there's frequency drops with below a certain level, we have what they call a dead band, which means it's the normal operating range for a frequency. But if the frequency goes below a certain set point, then that's how then the units know that how they need to respond in terms of whether to increase output or decrease. So they have control systems where they have set points, and they're programmed to detect when the system frequency reaches a certain level to say now it means they need to react in a particular manner. But I would assume for Unit 1, this is not activated because the unit is incapable of responding within those specified times. And in terms of Ms. Sibia's question, in terms of what will happen now if the station is recommissioned, I think I will need assistance with this one to say now this is in terms of Eskom's plan. Yes, the plan is to decommission the station in 2027, but it is a valid question to say, especially given the fact that we are having power shortages in the country, to say when the time comes, if the unit can still run and it's not decommissioned, then how will it be dealt with in terms of this exemption? I don't know if there's anyone from my team who would like to assist me with that one, if the station will need to reapply or for exemption. Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Makuban is offering to add. Please proceed, Madam Makuban.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I think from our side, and the reason why we're asking for these quarterly reports is to then see to what extent the assumptions made at the granting of the exemptions have changed. And so I think we would have to, especially because we don't have a lot of permanent exemptions. So it would be that process where we monitor. And so should there be changes in circumstances, we will have to revisit. So, for example, if they're saying that we are refurbishing Arnold, it's going to get another 10 years, and so those numbers and that cost benefit then becomes very different, and so we would have to revisit from that basis. So, those quarterly reporting will have to be important for us, because it's just a matter of saying, do the assumptions made still hold? Chair, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for the addition. But maybe just to add, Mr. Mkhize, on which is what I read as your fundamental input in terms of writing submissions in layman's terms. I think the difficulty is that electrical engineers, when they speak to electrical engineers, they speak electrical engineering speak. However, and as much as it applies to any profession, and the challenge, I think, is to be able to get somebody that fully comprehends the electrical systems, electrical engineering systems, but can convert that into simple layman's language. I think that for most professions is very difficult. Lawyers are the least ones, I think, to even say that, because legal speak is very difficult to understand, really. So I guess I don't know how we sort this problem, Mr. Mkhize, going forward. Because for me, when I read this, it was quite, I think I saw it in terms of this, that there's active power generation, there's ancillary services, and that's how I've actually compartmentalized these things in my head. As a non-electrical engineer, again, and therefore to say this exemption is not whatever that's being done to Arnott is not that the unit is not functional. It is functional. It just cannot provide that rapid response in terms of frequency modulation as an ancillary service. But in terms of active power generation, it is good in what it is good in what it does. And if you recall, this plant was mothballed and demothballed again post 2008. So yeah, I don't know how we sort that problem out going forward, especially for technical submissions from EIP. I don't know, Mr. Shozi, if it's possible for you to assist as well with that going forward with any of these submissions, so that it's quite clear for non-electrical engineers what exactly are we talking about here. All right, with that, members, the decision that is sought, if there are no additional questions or comments, the decision that is sought is on paragraph 14. It is again really, it's just what is sought is a permanent exemption in terms of grid code GCRC, the low frequency requirements. And the reasons for that, I think, have been clearly explained in terms of this plant needing to be decommissioned by 2027. It might not be, but if it's given further life, perhaps it may then need to, again, the question would be, would it be required to provide this ancillary service? And would the cost of putting the controls justify the actual service itself? So what do that, colleagues? That's decision that is sought. With a show of hands, members, if I can see support for that recommendation. Thank you, Madam Massetti, Mr. Nkize, Advocate Zitole, Ms. Bia, Mr. Pokula, would you be in support, sir? Thank you, Mr. Pokula. With that, Mr. Kalagani, you've got your decision. By the way, I dare some of my Nguni speakers as well to also please do say her surname. For me, it's a tongue twister. I don't know. I thought I was pretty good with languages, but it's killing me. I've tried it so many times. Anyway, item 8, Mr. Dlamini, there is no submission, correct? As we started in the beginning. There was no submission that was published on board pad. So we will skip item 8 and go straight into item 9. Mr. Mavuso, item 9, please. Can you also please, if you don't mind, preempt the questions? You know the questions that may have been asked by the members, whoever is presenting, to please preempt some of the questions that the members may have asked previously on these battery storage systems. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, with the agenda that was given by Eliezer last night, I do have item 8 from my side, but I will skip it. Item 9.
It wasn't published, Mr. Mogo, so that's the issue. And it also wasn't published on time, so the members will not have had the time to actually deal with it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Chair, the number 9 will be presented by Eva.
Thank you. If you can proceed, Ms. Matabel.
Thank you, Chair, and greetings to the board members and the community. Chair, I will request to present the project in a generic manner since they are similar. However, members are welcome to ask questions per specific project. And I would also like to correct paragraph 2 of table 3 in the submission where it says the grid code, it's still under draft as it has been approved by the energy regulator. Chair, the purpose for this submission is to request the Electricity Subcommittee to recommend the approval of the amendment of Schedule 1 of Eskom Generation License to include 8 battery storage systems. The battery storage energy system will be installed at Eskom distribution substation, and the lifespan of each project is 20 years. Chair, the name of the 8 projects are as follows, and they are also listed in Table 1 of each RFT. The first one is Skafley, located in the Western Cape with an installed capacity of 80 megawatt, followed by Melgoat, located in the Eastern Cape with an installed capacity of 35 megawatt, followed by Ilanscorp, located in KZN with an installed capacity of 8 megawatt, followed by Pongola, located in the KZN with an installed capacity of 40 megawatts, followed by Hex, located in the Western Cape with an installed capacity of 20 megawatt, Graafwater, located in the Western Cape with an installed capacity of 5 megawatt, Palace Havel, located in the Western Cape with an installed capacity of 9.5 megawatt, of which 6 megawatts is connected to a 11 kV, and 3.5 is connected to 22 kV. The last one is Rietfontein with an installed capacity of 1.54 megawatt plus 2.04 solar facility. The BESS project proposed to perform load shaving, auxiliary services, energy storage to provide additional power for 4 hours during peak hours. The system will be charged by electricity from Eskom distribution facility during off-peak periods and discharged into the grid during peak periods. The BESS facility must be designed to comply with the Battery Energy System Facility Grid Code, which was approved by NERSA, as I indicated. And the grid code will also assist Eskom to understand how the battery energy system affects the grid, and it will also help to amend the grid code should a need arise. The cost of the battery energy system will be recovered through MYPD tariff. This project went through public participation process, which is in accordance with the Act, and NERSA did not receive any objection, comments regarding the application after they were published in the newspapers. Members would recall that there were questions asked during the public hearing, and table 3 in the submission, it's a summary of questions that were asked during the public hearing, and Eskom requested to respond to those questions in a formal letter, and Eskom did the response, and the response were analyzed by the team. In this regard, I would like to say that this project are in compliance with Clause 7 of the Electricity Regulation Act, which states that no person may operate or generate a facility without a license issued by the energy regulator. And it is recommended that the Electricity Subcommittee may recommend the approval of the 8 project as stipulated in page 8 of the submission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Matabele. So this one is for recommendation to ER for a decision. Members, you've got the presentation, the submission before you. Any questions, comments? Seems like Ms. Matabele, you've made a good presentation. There are no questions from members. With that, then can I then maybe just move members to a decision? The decision that is sought, members, is for the recommendation to ER. That's captured in paragraph 14 of the submission, and its amendment is to recommend to ER for an amendment of Schedule 1 of this generation license, and 14.2 is also to approve the decisions, the decision and the reasons for decision. And each of those items, they've got their individual RFDs that have been provided, and captured. Each decision is captured, and the detail is captured also for each of those generators. So, members, with a show of hands, can I see support for the decision? Thank you, Madam Massetti. Thank you, Ms. Bia, Mr. Nkiza, Mr. Pokula, Advocate Sitole. You've got a full house decision, Ms. Matabele. This matter will then be recommended to ER for approval. Thank you. We then step off that one and go to item 10. Mr. Mavuso.
Yeah, thanks. This one will be presented by Andile. But here I just wanted to make a comment to say this is a very important report, especially in the climate of where renewable energy is a big thing in the country. And I think as a team, we should consider maybe sharing this report, these type of reports, with other government departments, like, for example, the Vulindlela people and also the DMRE. Thank you, Chair. Andile, can you please do the presentation?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vuso. Good morning to you, Chair, to the members and the colleagues. My name is Andile. I'll be presenting this report on the renewable energy monitoring of power plants. The submission is part of an ongoing monitoring project in the operation plan, and the noting and its approval is delegated to ELS Section 7 of the delegation matrix. Pursuant to Section 4 of the ERA and Section 15 of the Grid Code, NERSA collects information from IPPs for the purposes of monitoring. So the report is intended to inform the public and stakeholders about the contribution of RE to the power system. The report starts off with the brief summary of the renewable energy capacity determinations that have been made by the minister, and then the report also covers the capacity on the grid code, grid connected large-scale projects under the DMRE procurement program, and also those that are outside the procurement program. And currently, we were reporting for the period between January and June. So these reports are published twice a year. So the first one covers the first 6 months, and the second one covers the whole 12 months period. And of course, it includes in the report, what is also included are the costs, the energy, and also payments that are made for deemed energy payments and so on. The last part of the report covers the socio-economic development contributions that these projects make in the various areas where they're located. And these are part of the agreements that were signed between the department and the IPPs, that is to contribute to local development. And our recommendation, Chair, is on page Roman figure 4 of the cover submission, and we are recommending that the ELS committee notes the report on the performance of renewable energy power plants for January to June. It is attached as Appendix A, and also approve that the report be published on NERSA website. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Plasek. I think you should update your picture, by the way. And not sure this represents you, at least when I met you and recognize you. Colleagues, we've got the presentation before us. Any questions for the presenter? Madam Aseti?
Thank you, Chairperson. My system is a bit slow today. Chairperson, I appreciate the report from Mr. Klasheka, and there's just one issue for me that I think it needs to be clarified for transparency purposes, and that relates to two things for me. One is the deemed energy payments, to the extent that these are payments that will be recovered from the tariffs. And if this is energy that was never produced in the first place and was never supplied, and there was no benefits to consumers, but perhaps it was energy that was perhaps indicated, some indicative energy that could be supplied, if that is the case, and therefore because of other reasons, maybe that plant, the wind plant, maybe was not dispatched. If that is the case, can we be sort of clarified? And I think that it also needs to be, there's a need for transparency because it has a cost. So if it's a cost that is paid for something that was never achieved in the first place, maybe that could also be clarified, and why it is acceptable that the cost be allowed and also be recovered. So in this context, it may need to just be clarified so that we understand what exactly, how does it feature here in terms of the performance? And for deemed energy payments, there is a cost, but it may not have been energy that was produced in the first place. And that also goes with the curtailment aspect of it, how it is managed and how it arises, and that cost, who bears that cost on the curtailment. And I think there hasn't been sufficient clarification or transparency in terms of those two, deemed energy payments as well as curtailment cost. So I would like to request that maybe we be clarified on those. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam. Any other comments, questions, members? Mr. Klasheka, maybe just add on to this for me. We've got this huge emerging sector, which is unregulated, I guess, well, the registered producers, those that are not licensed. Do we actually keep an eye on them in terms of how much they actually generate? I know it's mainly bilateral contracts. Perhaps we don't have means, but is there any way that we can also include the performance of registrants, at least in how much they actually produced, and so that at least we can give a fuller picture, not only of the licensed generators, but also of the registered ones? Is that possible? Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to answer Ms. Moseti, I think, yeah, this was a tricky question because it is based on the power purchase agreements that were signed for the first round, I think even up to the fourth round, if I'm not mistaken. So this was just, I think it was included there for cases where the system, for instance, there's a failure in the power lines or some failure in the system, so that these projects would not be disadvantaged in terms of producing power, because the main issue here is that these projects are not non-dispatchable. So whatever they lose in terms of sales, that is power that they would have generated, for instance, because they do measure wind speed, for instance. If it's solar, they will be measuring the solar radiation. But most of these projects that are affected are the wind plants, because these are the ones that operate almost throughout the day. Most of the wind, for instance, picks up in the evenings, in the afternoon towards the evening. But during that time, at night, for instance, the power system demand is low. And this then means that if you let these projects generate, they then affect the system frequency. So they are then forced by the system operator to cut off some of the turbines, that is the wind turbines, so as to meet the conditions, for instance, that were mentioned earlier of the grid code, the frequency. So that is how it's dealt with. But now then this means that whatever they lost during that period, they then translate the wind speed that was measured during that time into how much they would have generated, because they do have a facility power curve which gives out how much energy they would have generated for a specific wind level or wind speed. There was a question about who bears the cost. Unfortunately, for these projects, because these were signed, these costs are borne by the public. That is, we paid through them through the PPAs that were signed between Eskom and the IPPs. I hope I've covered you, Ms. Moseti. It's difficult, but these costs are borne by the consumers. The other question, I think there was a question from Mr. Kumede regarding the huge emerging registrants, and can we be able to monitor these projects? I think that we could. It's just that for these specific projects, we're focusing more on the ones that are paid for by consumers at the time and this program of government. But we do cover projects that are outside this DMRE procurement program. For instance, I think in the report, I do cover a section for projects like Hewlett, Tongaat, all those projects that were there prior to the procurement program. We do cover them. But I think that there's nothing that can stop us from monitoring these projects as well, the ones that are under this registration process, because the grid code does indicate in any case that any renewable energy plant must report to NERSA. So it's a question of them now submitting whatever output energy or production that they have for each month, and then we can report on such. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Pashaka. I think in terms of section 9.4, I think we should keep a record on that. There is also a requirement, I think, by members of the public out there to understand the impact of the registrants in terms of the stability and also in terms of power supply. So if we can maybe just start that process, I think also so as I think there was also a report asked by the REC anyway, in terms of reporting on these registrants, which ones have come on stream, how much power they're actually producing. But I think maybe just to add on the report itself, could you maybe just in terms of the glossary of terms, if you could also maybe just offer a definition of this deemed energy, because sometimes it may come across as yes, it's power that's not generated, but it may be. It may even be power that is generated but curtailed in a way, but it needs to be paid for. If you can just maybe just add a definition of those terms there as well, so that everybody, when they read this, they can understand this deemed energy payment, so that the curtailment cost in a manner that is, if you could perhaps just, which is kind of layman as well, that we can bring it so that a layman who's reading this report can also understand what those terms mean. And that, it's not like it's frivolous expenditure, but it's actually captured. It's not like somebody is just, it's something that was captured for a reason. And if you can just maybe explain that, I think that may be useful as well.
Thank you, Chair. I will do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mkiza, your hand is up as a follow-up, sir.
Yeah, yes, Chairperson, one might not, it's not necessarily on the presentation itself, if I can put it like that. I appreciate the presentation and I'm supportive of the recommendation, but I would appreciate just to get to understand what the division is doing in respect of the just transition by any facts or data that is then generated from our side to be able to have a better grasp and understanding of the transition as we see, especially now that we are looking at these renewable energy projects, and we also have a separate presentation that is expected to come forth regarding the registrants, which then gives the overview. And I take it that then one will then look as in this situation as it is unfolding and how we expect it to be in the future, and how then that would assist in terms of seeing the picture as there is this evolution of the electricity industry. I just like to understand if there is anything, and if there isn't, I think it would be important then that we also consider that in terms of the information that we and the reports that we generate, and kind of consolidate them in a way to get an overview of how the sector is unfolding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkiza. I guess the request is quite clear on this one. It may not be something that comes with this report, but maybe we may look at either extending the report to include a summary of in terms of the numbers, in terms of how we're doing in terms of the JET program, or rather in terms of you coming up with a separate report. But I don't know what your views are.
Thank you, Chair. I think, the main issue I think that we have with the current registration process is that it's not as orderly as one gets from the IRP, for instance, projects that just come in, and to some extent it becomes difficult to know exactly how many megawatts would come in at a particular time, because I think the planning part really is important. That is to know if you are registering so many in a given period, you are at least likely to know exactly how much do these projects have on the system, how much impact, they have on the system going forward. Unlike the ones that we are licensing, the licensed ones are easy to follow up. But then again, reporting, I think it's good because at least it gives us a sense of knowing how much, if you, for instance, get 1,000 megawatts of solar, we now know roughly how much that should give us in a given year. For instance, if we register so many, if it's 500, for instance, each year, we know roughly how much that would give us in a given year. So that would help as well. I think obviously in this transition period, it's a bit trickier. It's a bit, there's no order at all here. But obviously this is done so that we were able to fill the gap that we're experiencing in terms of supply. Yeah, thank you, Chair. But I will include, I think I'll speak to the licensing team as well, just to see how can we get the data from these registrants, and then we will then report accordingly.
All right. Thank you. I think it would also be useful to see if you can't get data from the systems operator. I mean, for instance, if you were to look at the California system, the California ISO does give this data in terms of the production or the generation coming from renewable energies, to the extent that, for instance, we've had at some point been informed that the California, for instance, for 3 seconds sometime this year, actually generated all its power from renewables for 3 seconds in that particular day. So it would be useful to also have something like that, so we can track. So to the extent to which we can use section 9.4 to get the data in terms of the registrants, but also see what perhaps we can actually source from the systems operator. Colleagues, with that, so and also you'll then come back to us in terms of how you're going to structure reports, whether you're going to integrate all these two issues, the report on the registrants and also on the just energy transition, whether you're going to integrate it with this report or you're going to deal with it separately. Perhaps you can then inform us at the next meeting as a matter arising, just so we can guide the team and the members in terms of how of what to expect from you. So how do you deal with this 9.4 with the registrants? How do you propose we deal with that? And then secondly, how do we deal with this question that has been asked by Mr. Mkhize in terms of us monitoring the just energy transition? Members, the decision that is sought is on page 4 of 24. The overlaid numbers, page numbers, section paragraph 14. Members, we are asked to note the actual report and to approve that the report be published on the NERSA website with the with any of the enhancements that may have been proposed by members. Members, how do you vote? By show of hands. Thank you, Mr. Pokula, Madam Massetti, Mr. Mkhize, Madam Spear, and Advocate Sitole. I also support. Thank you. Got your decision, Mr. Klasheka?
Thank you.
All right. If we can now then go to item 11. Is it still yours? Mr. Mavuso?
No, Chair, it's Madam.
All right. You don't want to introduce this one? No? Mr. Matung?
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Good morning to the members of the ELS. The purpose of this submission is to request the Electricity Subcommittee to note the progress report of the renewable IPP's grid code exemption as granted by the energy regulator. The committee is delegated to note the monitoring of the licensed technical performance as per section 2.0 of the electricity delegation matrix. This report focuses on exemptions as granted since bid window 1 until July 2022. There was a mistake on the document, which is written January 2022, should be July 2022. So in summary, on table 1 is the status per bid window. In total, the exemptions that have been granted by the energy regulator, we're looking at 116, of which 73 of them have been closed and 43 is still opened. So in total, we are looking at the average percentage of closed exemption of 68% across all bid windows from bid window 1 up until bid window 4. And majority of the opened exemptions is from the 6-yearly routine and power quality, as well as the simulation models. And with that being said, Chairperson, the recommendation is on page 6 of 7, on which the ELS is to know the progress report on the renewable energy independent power producers grid code exemption. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Members, you've got the submission before you. Any questions, comments? If no comments, members, thank you, Mr. Cooper. It means your report is quite clear. Can I then maybe direct members to then page 6 of 10, the overlay, the green numbering. The recommendation is on paragraph 14, and the ELS is requested to note the progress report on the exemptions. Members, what say ye? By show of hands, would you support? Thank you, Mr. Pukula, Mr. Maseti, Mr. Nkiza. I also support Advocates Tola and Mr. Bia. Thank you, members. You've got your decision. Can we now move on to agenda item number? Madam Spear, your hand is still up, lingering? Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Can we now move on to agenda item number 12? Mr. Mavuso?
Thanks, Chair. This one will be presented by Bongani. Bongani, can you also please, in your presentation, do mention the whole issue of the workshop that we are planning around this? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mavuso. Doc, over to you.
Yes, good morning, Chair, and good morning, members and colleagues. The purpose of this submission is to request the Electricity Subcommittee to approve the consultation paper on Eskom's retail tariff plan and to approve the publication of the consultation paper, as well as to recommend the noting of the consultation paper by the energy regulator. So, Chair, this submission, so in terms of the delegation of authority, section 2.1.1 empowers the ELS to approve the publication of consultation papers. So this submission was originally submitted on the 17th of August 2020, and NERSA went on and published it for comments, and we had a public hearing in January 2021. But there was a decision to put this submission on hold for a number of reasons. The main one being the fact that the electricity industry is undergoing some reforms. The main reform is around the unbundling of Eskom, as well as the reviewing of the electricity pricing policy and the Electricity Regulation Act. So then Eskom resubmitted this retail tariff plan on the 5th of August 2022. So in terms of the background, Eskom last updated its tariffs in 2012 based on the cost of supply that was conducted then. So, Chair, basically the purpose of this application is to firstly to update tariffs with the findings from the cost to serve study that Eskom conducted in 2019. Also, Chair, Eskom also wants to to align the recovery of revenues from different tariff components through fixed costs. So where they are fixed costs, they want to increase the proportion of tariffs that recover fixed costs, and simultaneously reduce variable charges. Also, Eskom is proposing to rationalize municipal tariffs. So in other words, tariffs that municipalities use to buy from Eskom. Currently, there are about 13 tariffs. They want to rationalize those tariffs to 3 components, one for large power users, another for small power users, as well as public lighting. Another major proposal is to restructure their time of use tariffs, specifically to change the ratios between low season off-peak and high season peak tariffs. Currently, the ratio is 1:8, sorry, which means that it costs consumers 8 times more to consume during high season peak vis-a-vis low season off-peak. They also want to change the number of hours. Currently, there are 3 peak hours in the morning, so they want to move 1 hour to the evening for peak, and as well as introduce 2 standard hours on Sundays for their time of use customers. They're also proposing to remove the IBT, the inclining block tariff, from home light residential tariffs, as well as home power residential tariffs. They are also proposing to introduce a generation capacity charge to recover generation related costs, which currently are mainly recovered through energy. And lastly, Chair, they're also proposing to introduce a time of use residential tariff called HomeFlex. This tariff is specifically for customers that have installed small-scale embedded generator installations. It could be solar, or mainly it's solar. So those customers will have to be moved into this new tariff called HomeFlex, which has a net metering, and it's also on time of use. So, Chair, if I may just bring members in terms of, so we've prepared a number of questions that will be that we've asked stakeholders to comment on in terms of different proposals that Eskom is putting forward. And then we hope that the publication will be published, the consultation paper will be published on the NESA's website for stakeholders to comment on. But the final version that would be published would incorporate comments from members that we received today, as well as comments that we received from the Mr. Committee last week, in terms of additional questions that he thinks we must include and then ask stakeholders to comment on. So in terms of the timelines, Chair, if I may take members to page 5 of 147. So it depicts the timelines there in terms of how we propose that the tariff plan will be considered, and then we hope that by end of November we'll have a decision. And as Mr. Mavoso pointed out, as part of the timelines, we are proposing a workshop, with a full workshop with all the members, due to the nature of this application, which is quite extensive and affects all electricity consumers in South Africa. And then lastly, Chair, in terms of the recommendations on page 7 of 147, as I mentioned, that we request ELS to approve the consultation paper as well as its publication, as well as to recommend the noting of the consultation paper by the energy regulator. If I may stop there, Chair, thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Konjelayo. Members, we've got the presentation before you. But before you do, I mean, one thing that I've noticed in the recent past, Doc, is we don't seem to be getting active participation by stakeholders in terms of our consultation papers. How are we going to ensure active participation in this particular case? And is there a particular process? May I suggest perhaps there may be a need to have a stakeholder, just an engagement workshop with them, so you can explain this to the layman, and actually maybe to then explain how it actually impacts them, rather than just a normal consultation, rather than at the end, the Section 10 public hearings, in which case that you can't respond, you can't even guide in terms of the input. Is that something that you could consider, perhaps, so that we can then increase the level of participation by stakeholders in our processes? But members, and you will respond to that when you respond to comments and questions by members. Members, you've got the presentation before you. This one is really just at this stage that we approve the consultation paper. We'll still get an opportunity to engage, as indicated, with the proposal. Ourselves internally will have a workshop in which we'll then be able to engage with the proposal in detail and get the team to guide us in terms of what is being applied for, and maybe to even indicate their views on it. And then, of course, as part of the decision that will process that may then ensue post the actual consultation, we'll possibly have another workshop just before a decision is sought. So I guess what I'm saying is, we know we actually have not engaged with you on what is being asked, but there are opportunities, of course, that we are hoping will then be created for us to be, as the committee, to be able to engage with the paper. But the team is really here today to request the approval of the consultation paper, and that the consultation paper be published. And then, of course, the paper itself will also be recommended to the ER. Your comments, questions, members? Madam Massetti, you can go first, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairperson, for the opportunity. Chairperson, I appreciate that at this point it is just for consultation, but I do want to ask a question that seeks to get clarification in terms of the processes that are currently in place, so that we are not confused, at least from my side, of what we are trying to do and trying to achieve, and so that stakeholders as well can be able to fit this work within these other processes that we have initiated. For instance, we have published a proposed methodology for determination of tariffs. And that way we are trying to operationalize Section 15 of the Act. Now, I would like to then get an understanding of how does this plan on retail tariffs, how does it fit in to that work that we are trying to do, where we actually published the broad principles of how to determine tariffs in order to comply with our mandate that is in Section 15 of the electricity regulation. So if we have this and also what we are already consulting on, how do these two fit in together in terms of that specific process? And that's all that I would like to ask at this stage, Chairperson, so that at least one can get a better understanding in terms of sort of the direction that we are taking, and also so that stakeholders as well can be in a position to place and locate this work that we will be publishing for them to comment within these other processes that are out there where we request their input. That's all from my side, Chairperson, just for clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Massetti. Mr. Pokula?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I only got the opportunity to read what is in here, a day or so ago, but my request would be, in the future consultation papers that we are going to issue, that we catch and understand the nuance of why we are there as a regulator, and that function of ours is to balance the conflicting requirements of all the stakeholders, all of the people that are involved in the electricity supply industry. So when we craft questions, we have to take that into consideration. I don't want to pick up a specific one. I'm just saying that going forward, we need to find a way of showing that our function is to balance the conflicting requirements and not necessarily to bash the regulated entity or any other person around the way we ask questions. We have to be objective, but I think as we go, we will find a way of refining some of our questions so that they show where we are as a regulator, right in the middle there to balance the requirements of all stakeholders. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Pukula. And can I then also request, Mr. Pukula, that because the team does still have time to update the consultation paper, if you have any specific sections that you'd like us to improve on, if you can kindly communicate that directly with the team. Thank you. Mr. Mkhize?
Thanks, Chairperson. Mine is somehow related to what Madam Masset has alluded to. I would appreciate if the workshop could be scheduled soonest, and in the workshop we get to understand the program of the division, and then be in a position to, over and above locating this project in the whole program, understand how then it fits, whether things are optimally sequenced. And also, as you spoke earlier on concerning the responses of the public to our consultation papers, to consider maybe if we are not overburdening and how these are like issued in a manner that enables active participation from the public, and also not just even just participation, but over and above that, value addition, as well as moving from the principles that we looked at multidisciplinary teams, and then also to be able to break silos if necessary, to look at also the matters that pertain to resource allocation within even within the division, as well as across divisions, to be able to assist in terms of execution of the program. I think that for me will be crucial over and above this matter, because there are certain specific issues that also need to be considered if one looks at the restructuring of the tariffs. I will leave it at that. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Doc, over to you for responses.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So yes, on the issue of active participation by all stakeholders, yes, we would consider having additional engagements, more than just a public hearing and public comments. And as I said, that due to the nature of this application, it affects all customers, all electricity customers, including customers that are buying from municipalities. So we'll consider expanding or extending the consultation process so that we try and bring in all stakeholders. And thanks, Chair. So in terms of
before you proceed, Mr. Mkhize, I see your hand is up. Do you have a quick follow-up? Is it a lingering hand?
No, apologies, a lingering hand.
All right, no, thank you. Please proceed, Doc.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So in terms of Ms. Massetti's question, so the electricity pricing policy requires that cost of supply must be conducted every 5 years, or at least when there are changes to either your cost structure or customer base or sales. So with Eskom, this was last done in 2012. And they updated their tariffs in 2013. So there's a period of almost 10 years since this was done. So we thought that there's a risk that current tariffs are not cost reflective. So there's a need to do that. So now what is currently happening in terms of the revision of the current methodology, we thought that that process, as it unfolds and the timelines associated with it, would the expectation is that at least by 2025, we'll be moving towards this new dispensation, if I may call it that. But in the meantime, we need to still be able to approve tariffs that are based on cost to serve. And there's an opportunity to revise tariffs annually during the ERTA process, which is the Eskom retail tariff and structural adjustment process. So there's an opportunity to say, once we know the end state and the implementation plan around the new methodology, then we'll be able to incorporate or gradually incorporate any changes to the tariff structures and tariff methodologies. So there's an opportunity to continuously do that once we know that we have reached a point where we are ready to implement the new pricing structure, and within also the new pricing structure, there will always be some common matters. For instance, the issues around how you calculate your network costs. So because the current cost to serve methodology clearly separates your retail as well as network costs. So those will still remain in place, even in, I suppose, in the new pricing methodology. So we thought that instead of waiting until we have the end, we know the end product, let's do what you can in terms of aligning the current tariffs with the costs.
So sorry, Doc, before you proceed, I think as guided earlier in another consultation by Mr. Mkhize, a lot of the questions that members would pose, because there has been an application by an applicant, because I guess we are responding to this because there has been an application. So there are questions that members would pose that we seek not necessarily just to get responses to in this meeting, but rather to then say, yes, there's been an application by an applicant which NERSA is obliged to actually consider. How then do we locate it in terms of the program, as Mr. Mkhize has put it? How do we locate this? The question is, could we not perhaps, even the question that Madam Maseti is asking, maybe we should be able to go into the consultation paper, frame it question, so that we can also then ask the team, so we can ask the stakeholders, including the applicant, him or herself, in terms of how they integrate. So I guess what I'm saying here, let's be guided that although, yes, we are responding, but it's more to update the consultation paper rather than for us to try to justify. And also, as part of the workshops that you're going to have, you need to be able to integrate the process properly. I'm not sure if I'm clear with what I'm saying.
No, it's clear, Chair. It's noted.
All right, please proceed there.
Thank you.
And note the questions and note the follow-up questions, comments on the chat by Madam Maseti. I think I'm also just trying to guide precisely because of the chat of the comments by Madam Maseti on the chat. Thank you. Please proceed.
Okay, so yeah, so I don't know if I still need to add anything on Mrs. Maseti's question.
No. I was just guiding that in your responses. Also, let's see the members are guiding on the process, okay. And right. We need to be able to incorporate the guidance that is offered by the members. Okay, please proceed.
All right. Yes, Chair. So what we'll do then, when we update the consultation paper, we would also ask. Provide an opportunity, first of all, the licensee to respond, as well as stakeholders to comment on how they see this process, and along with the current work that we are doing in terms of revising the pricing methodology. Thanks, Chair.
And I saw Mr. Sichotlo's hand. Do you want to add?
No, Chair. I think you covered me, and as I spoke to you in the morning, I'm not good in health, but I think what you're talking about is more of the process issues. Can I suggest that members, if you have more questions, can you just give us those questions, and then Bongani can us in the team, let us rather take those questions and then put them in the consultation paper, and then we can take it from there.
Thank you, Mr. Sichotlo. Please proceed, Doc.
Thanks, Chair. So, in terms of Mr. Pokula's comment around being neutral, yes, we would appreciate any comments that we might get from him in terms of how to improve on some of the questions there. And then in terms of the workshop to be scheduled, we'll try our best to make sure that we put this project into the overall picture in terms of other programs in the division, and also the interdependencies that exist between this and other projects that you are doing, and locate it specifically in terms of the broader pricing work that you are doing. And also we note the comment around the how we should bring in other teams and sort of have a multidisciplinary approach to this project, as well as the need to broadly consider the participation of other stakeholders in a way that will allow them to provide more comments. But just generally, in terms of the work that's been done in terms of this application, there is a lot of interest. So we've seen a lot that even in the news, there's a lot of discussion around it. Some of that is misinformed. So it's quite important that we really involve stakeholders in this project. Thanks, Chair. If I may stop there.
Thank you. I think, members, the challenge that we've been facing is that clearly you have a group of people that always comment on this consultation paper, mainly the applicant itself and also the consultants that are working in that space. And I guess because we've traditionally been regulating, as I guess the target, our active electricity supply industry, that the comments have really largely been coming from the supply contingent of the population, and ours is to see whether we can't get active participation from the other half of who we regulate for, because we're not just regulating the suppliers, but we're also regulating on behalf of the consumers. Is that it's going to be important for us to find a way of enticing inputs, value-adding inputs from the demand side. And most people, I guess, they tend to be intimidated by the terms that we put forward, and maybe there's no clarity in terms of them understanding exactly what the questions we are asking, and because it's a technical field, some people just throw their hands up in the air and basically leave it to the experts, if you like, and it's going to be contingent on us. It's going to be important that we break that cycle, that we actually talk the language that can be understood by everybody, and that we also expand this and invite as much comments and greater understanding and appreciation of the issues that are at play here, including perhaps even in terms of the whole issue of the changing landscape, and also perhaps NERSA going deeper into regulating tariffs as per the provisions of the Act, perhaps bigger in a broader fashion than it may have done in the past. And for us, really, it's about how do we make sure that there is greater stakeholder participation broadly. As Mr. Pukula was talking about, yes, of course, there is the issue also, the tendency even with the regulator, is that we want to then, because they may limited inputs from the demand side, basically tend to then take the side of one party and not play a balancing role of listening to both parties, because perhaps the sound of the demand side is silent. Perhaps there is not much coming from the demand side, and therefore we tend to actually fulfill that role, and maybe departing from the center role that we're supposed to be playing. So it's going to be important, I think, colleagues, to make sure that we ensure active participation, value-adding participation from an informed point of view in terms of what is being proposed, what is being applied for by the applicant, which NERSA is obliged to consider, irrespective of any other processes that NERSA may have. But at the same time, locate it properly, but make sure that everybody else understands what is being proposed, so that they can effectively comment. With those words, members, I think I'll then take you to the decision that is being sought, taking into account all of the inputs that have been given to the team. I have commented comprehensively on this document, and my comments are yet to be incorporated as well. And those hopefully will then appear in the final consultation paper that is published. So can I then take you to the decision that is sought? It starts on page 6 of 147, but it then spills over to page 7. So members, I think I have read that into the record to request the committee to approve the consultation paper on the Eskom's retail tariff plan, and 2, to approve the publication of the consultation paper once it's approved in terms of 15.1, and to recommend the noting of the consultation paper to, yes, Madam Maseti, you can be excused after this if you don't mind. If we can just go for the decision, members, just before Madam Maseti disappears. Members, by show of hands, would you approve the decision? Thank you, Mr. Pukula, Madam Maseti, Mr. Mkhize, Advocate Sithole. Madam Spear?